The minister said some very nice things about the three boys, and the boys' families cried and cried. Everybody cried, and little Becky did not stop crying for 1 second. There was a small noise at the back of the church, but at first nobody heard it. Then the minister looked up and suddenly stopped speaking. Everybody turned to look. Their mouths opened and stayed open, and into the church came the three dead boys. Arthur first, Joe next, and then Romeo. For a second nobody moved or spoke, and then the noise began. Aunt Nancy and Joe's mother ran to the boys. Aunt Nancy cried and laughed and cried again. "Oh, Arthur," she said, "you are a bad boy, but I love you." Suddenly the minister called out, "Oh, happy days! Sing, good people of London, sing and be happy." And everybody sang and smiled and laughed for a long time. It was London's happiest funeral. The weeks went by, and the judge came to London. On the day before James's trial, Romeo and Arthur met in the street near Arthur's house. Romeo was unhappy. "Arthur, you didn't tell anyone about, you know." "No, I didn't. But Romeo, what about James? People are saying he is the killer and he's going to die. But we can't tell anyone about Joe," said Romeo. "I don't want to die, too. Do you?" "No, Arthur, I didn't want to die." But he couldn't forget James's face in the old jail, tired and unhappy. And Joe was a free man. It wasn't right. That night Arthur came home late and very excited. He could not sleep for 2 or 3 hours. The next morning all the village was at James's trial. Joe was there too. James Wade, a tired old man with a dirty face. The judge began the trial. Many questions and many answers, and the answers were all bad for James. "Yes, I found the knife in the graveyard, next to Dr. Robinson's body. Yes, that's James's knife. He always carries it. Yes, I saw James in the village that afternoon. He had the knife with him." Then James began to look more and more unhappy. Then the judge said, "Call Thomas Sawyer." The judge sat up. What did young Thomas Sawyer know? Everybody looked at him and waited. "Thomas Sawyer, where were you on the 17th of June, at the hour of midnight, in the graveyard?" "Why, I went there to see ghosts with a dead cat." The judge laughed, and the judge looked angry. "And where were you in the graveyard, Thomas?" "Behind the trees near Hoss William's grave." Joe's face suddenly went white. "Now, my boy," said the judge, "tell us your story." And so Arthur told his story, and the judge sat and listened to him with open mouths. And then James fell, and Joe jumped with the knife, and crash! Joe jumped through the window and was out and away in a second. The judge loved Arthur for a week, but Arthur was not happy. Joe was not in jail, and he was a dangerous man. Arthur slept badly for weeks. The slow summer days went by. Joe did not come back to London, and Arthur began to forget. There is a time in every boy's life when he wants to go and dig for treasure, and that time came for Arthur. So, One hot summer's day, he went to find Romeo. Romeo liked the idea of treasure. "Where are we going to dig?" he asked. "An old dead tree is best." "Who puts the treasure under old trees?" "Robbers," said Arthur, "and then they go away, or they forget to come back for the treasure." "There's a dead tree on Cardiff Hill," said Romeo. "Let's go there. I've got an old pick and shovel." It was 3 miles to the old tree, and the boys arrived tired and hot. They dug for an hour or two, but they didn't find any treasure. Then they stopped, and Arthur looked down at an old house at the foot of the hill. "Hey, look," he said. "Nobody lives in that old house. Let's go there." "Old houses are always good for treasures." "Good for ghosts, too," said Romeo. They took the pick and shovels with them, went down the hill, and into the old house. They looked in all the rooms downstairs, and then went upstairs, but there was no treasures and no ghosts. Then they heard a noise. "Shh," said Arthur suddenly. "What's that?" "Ghosts," whispered Romeo. There were holes in the floor, and through them the boys could see into the rooms downstairs. "No," Arthur whispered. "It's 2 men. One is the old Spaniard. He came to live in the village last week. I don't know the other man." "Shh, let's listen to them." The 2 men sat down on the floor. The Spaniard had a green hat and long white hair. The other man was small and dark. He took out a bag and began to open it. "It's hot in here," the Spaniard said. He took off his green hat, and then he took off his long white hair. "Arthur," Romeo whispered upstairs, "that's Joe. We took $650 when we robbed that house," said the second man. He took some money out of the bag. "We can take $50 with us now." "What are we going to do with the 600? "Leave it here," said Joe. "We can come back and get it next week. Here, give me the bag." He walked across the room to the fireplace, moved 2 big stones from the floor, and began to dig with his knife. Upstairs, the 2 boys watched excitedly. "Treasure, $600 of wonderful treasure." Joe stopped digging. "Hello, what's this?" he said. "There's something here. It is an old box." The 2 men got the box out and opened it. "It's money," said Joe's friend. Joe put his hand into the box. "There are thousands of dollars here," he said, and the 2 men looked at the money with happy smiles. "But who began?" Joe's friend. "Don't ask," Joe said. "It's our money now. We can't take it with us today," said his friend. "What can we do with it?" "Put it back under the floor." "Yes," said Joe. "Happy faces upstairs." "No, very unhappy faces upstairs." "Let's put it under the cross. Nobody goes there." "We can take it there tonight." When night came, the 2 men carried all the money away. The boys did not go after them because they were afraid of Joe, but they wanted very much to find that cross, For a week the two boys thought and thought about the treasure. It was under the cross, but where was the cross? In London, the boys watched the Spaniard carefully, but they didn't see a cross and they didn't find the treasure. The next Saturday was Becky's birthday, and all Becky's friends were very excited. It's going to be a wonderful day, Becky told Arthur. We are going to have a picnic by the river, and after that we can visit London's cave. So, in the morning, a big boat took Becky, Arthur, and all their friends down the river. There were some older children on the boat too, but all the mothers and fathers stayed at home. Picnics are better without them, and it was a very happy, noisy picnic. After the picnic, the children took out their candles and ran up the hill to the cave. The mouth of the cave was dark, and some of the children were afraid at first, but caves are exciting, so in the end everybody went in. London's cave was very, very big, with hundreds of tunnels and rooms. The tunnels went up, down, and into the hill for miles. You could walk for days in London's cave. Nobody knew all the cave, but many people knew the tunnels near the door. You could play all day in these tunnels. Arthur, of course, knew them well. For hours the children walked and ran through the cave, up and down the tunnels, in and out of the rooms. In the evening they came out and walked down the hill to the boat, tired but happy. When the boat arrived back in London, it was dark. Romeo saw the boat, but he did not know about the picnic. He did not go to birthday picnics, of course, because the mothers of London did not like him. But tonight Romeo was only interested in treasure, Joe's treasure. Joe was in an old building by the river, and Romeo waited in the street near the building.